Stardate 831.0. All right, so this is the change of plans journal entry, audio journal entry. A lot has happened. I'll try to keep it short. Um, so last time I was going to hike in with Wishy and Padre, and we were going out of Independence, which was around mile, I think, 780 something. So I had two hiking partners, and I'd been worried about hiking alone. I didn't want to do that anymore. So we sort of made a deal that we'd stick together for the next sections while we were going over the passes. So I felt a lot better, and we went in, and it was really good the first maybe like 2 or 3 days. Um, they're, the passes are kind of crazy. There's these long approaches, and there's snow fields. So you're basically moving very, very slowly through deep snow towards this kind of cliff. Um, and it's flat. And when you get to the cliff, you then just go straight up for, I don't know, maybe 500 to 1,000 feet. And you get to kind of like the edge. It's very thin, sort of almost like a razor edge. And there's one spot on that razor edge where you can pass over to the other side, and then you walk down the backside into another valley filled with snow, and you walk through that valley for another 2 or 3 miles. So in total, it's about 4 to 5 miles of deep snow, and in the middle you have this giant obstacle that you have to climb over, and it gets very technical. You have to use your ice axe and put on these sort of like spikes, cleats on the bottom of your shoes called micro spikes that everyone has, and it gets pretty dangerous. The last one I think I talked about, Forester Pass, I actually had to haul stuff up. The ones that we encountered our first 2 days, they weren't quite that bad. So we were able to, make it over to the top section, which is called the cornice. It's sort of like this ledge and of snow that you have to get over without taking off our packs or handing things around. So that was going really well, and we were having a ton of fun. And on the backsides, you can glissade, which means basically you can just sled down on your butt a few hundred feet, which saves you the effort of walking down. And we camped, pretty close to each other, and we're getting up early in the morning to try to walk on harder snow. In the afternoons, it got really soft. So I think on the fourth day, something went terribly wrong, which is we realized, well, a few things went wrong. First, we kind of sat down and we were like, all right, we haven't been moving that quickly. Let's see how much food we have, and let's see how much farther we have to go. So we've made it about, I think, 20 or 30 miles in 4 days, and normally you can do that in about one day. So I looked at my food situation and I was like, I don't have enough food to go to where we want to go, which was at that point about 60 miles further, and I only had maybe three days of food left. So they had a little bit more food, and we decided that we would try to ration the food and that we could make it. And hey, no, at first it was a shock, but then it was like, well, hey, no big deal. We'll just eat half our dinner at night and then the other half in the morning, and that'll be our breakfast, and then we can eat our breakfast for dinner the next night, and we can eat half lunches, and it'll be okay, no problem. So that was a bit of a wake-up call, and I think we all sort of felt a little bit trapped at that point, because when you get stuck in the deep snow, you really don't feel like you can go anywhere, and it's very unpredictable. We could very well, on the other side of one of these passes, discover just this huge snowfield that we wouldn't be able to walk anywhere in. It's a very sort of suffocating feeling. And when it gets really bad in the afternoon, sometimes you get in a spot where you have to dig yourself out, and it takes maybe 5 or 10 minutes, and You try to go forward, 50 yards, and it takes you half an hour to do that. So I think we were sort of had a sort of a somber moment. We were feeling a little bit, trapped. So that day we went over 2 passes. We were really trying to push hard to get some miles, and what that meant was the second pass, unfortunately, we had to do later in the day, and it was super soft on the other side. And we were trying to find a place to camp, and a storm was rolling in. Pretty big storm was rolling in. So we got to a little spot that had enough room for maybe one tent. It was very rocky on a slope, and Padre decided that they were gonna stay there, and they'd already seen a couple other spots that looked like that. So that was a good move for them. I might have been able to sort of squeeze in on that rock with them, but on our maps it said that only 0.2 miles away was a real campsite, and I was pretty hopeful that that campsite would pan out and it would have flatter ground. So I said, hey guys, I'm just going to be 0.2 miles ahead, and we should make a plan for the morning. So our plan was we were going to get up at 2:30 a.m. And start hiking. And the reason we were going to get up so early was that the snow would be hard for longer, so we could cover more ground on the harder snow. So I said, all right, I'll set my alarm for 2:30 a.m. I'll be 0.2 miles forward at the campsite. Just use your GPS to find me in the morning. And they said, okay, we'll. And they said something else. There was something else they said that I guess I didn't really pay attention to. It was sort of like Padre was saying, imagine the amount of time it'll take us to reach you in 0.2 and then start hiking then. And I should have paid more attention to that, because I think we had a misunderstanding and we kind of had 2 different plans. I thought they were going to just walk to my campsite and we'd leave together, and I think he thought that we would just start walking at the same time, and if by doing that we would just kind of bump into each other. So I thought we had one plan, but I think we actually kind of had 2 plans. So got in about 8 o'clock, went to sleep. It started hailing pretty hard, and a thunderstorm rolled in with a lot of lightning. It was pretty scary because we were up high. We were still at about 11,000 feet. And just like the whole sky, the whole world would just light up like super, super bright. And thunder in one of these valleys just echoes off of all of the mountains. You're sort of in this bowl where the sides of the bowl are just a solid wall of mountain. So it's just really hard to sleep and super scary. So I must have, got a couple hours sleep, and my alarm went off at 2:30 a.m. I looked around, and I was already buried in maybe like 4 or 5 inches of snow, and my tarp was sort of sagging. So I got up and looked around and walked around a little bit, and decided that it was absolutely crazy for us to be leaving at 2:30 a.m. in the dark in the middle of a thunder hailstorm, and decided that they must be coming to the same conclusion. And I could actually hear them a little bit. I think I heard Wishy sort of being like, oh no, I can't believe it's so early, or something like that. That's how close we were to each other. So I thought, okay, they must be coming to the same conclusion as me. They must be getting back in their tent and assessing. So I got back in my tarp and said, okay, I'll just wait. I'm not going to break my camp. I'm going to wait till they actually get here so we can talk a little bit and reassess what our situation is. So I did that. I just got back in my sleeping bag and kind of lay there. And they didn't show up for maybe half an hour and then an hour. So I thought, okay, good. They must just be, staying in their tent and trying to wait out some of the hail. And then I went to sleep, fell asleep, and woke up about maybe 6:30 or 7, and the hailstorm was dying off. So I got up and packed up my camp, and it was a little more quiet, so I sort of yelled towards where their camp was, because I was sure they could hear me, since I was able to hear them earlier. but I didn't get any response. And I started walking towards their camp a little bit, but the post-holing was really bad. I decided not to waste my energy. The post-holing was still bad. So I thought, okay, they must have left already. And I don't know why they didn't come to my camp, because it's like, right on the GPS. It's right on the trail. Should be super easy to find with the GPS. But again, that's where I think we must have had different plans. I think they probably headed down to the lake where the snow was a little bit more firm. So I thought, okay, if they really did leave at 2:30 a.m., then I'm hours behind them at this point. I'm 3 or 4 hours behind them. And so I got going, started pushing. There were no footprints anywhere, and it was the first time that I had been in that situation where there was just no trail to follow and no footprints to follow. So all I had was my GPS. And my toes were in kind of bad shape. I forgot to mention that, but I started losing feeling in all my toes, because your feet are just basically under the snow all, for half the day, sort of freezing and from the impact. So I got going, and I finally made it out of the valley and down out of the snow into this like very beautiful section, and kept going, and didn't run into them anywhere. By about 3 o'clock, I got to a ranger station and a trail that said Bishop Pass Trail, and I'd noticed that earlier there was this Bishop Pass Trail that was sort of an exit point. So instead of going the full 60 miles, I sort of discovered, luckily, that on my map, look, oh hey, there's like an exit point here. That's only 20 or 30 miles, and then I'd be back in town. So I took a look at my situation. I said to myself, they're probably up ahead somewhere, but I don't know that, and I can't follow their tracks because, again, it had been raining all day there, so that meant higher up it must have been snowing. And I decided to go out on the Bishop Pass Trail the next day. So I camped at the ranger station, which was locked, but I just lay down on the porch and ate a whole lot of my food. I hadn't eaten dinner the night before because I thought I needed to start rationing food, and I thought it was okay. But by about 2 or 3 the next day, which was when I got to the ranger station, I was realizing what effect that would have on me, especially with post-holing, because you're using so much energy to post-hole, and I was just completely exhausted, and I felt like I couldn't walk another mile. So I got out 2 dinners. I made 2 dinners for myself and ate a whole bunch of other food, other parts of my snack food, because I thought the next day I would only have to get over Bishop Pass. And at that point I was really committing to not catching them by eating all that food. And I had actually a really nice afternoon because I had so much time, and I got to do my stretches finally, and I dried all my stuff out and kind of hung out at the ranger station and pretended that I had a little, like a little ranch. There was a nice river that went by, so I cleaned off and took a bath in the river, a little bit of a cold bath, but it was worth it. And the next day, I struck out around 6 a.m. on the Bishop Pass Trail, which I knew nothing about. I only knew that it eventually got close to the town of Bishop, and that there was a parking lot there. So I got going, and the trail seemed like it was in pretty good shape. People had carved steps there. There was even a couple bridges. There was a little bit of a dodgy river crossing, more like a waterfall crossing, but it was kind of okay, and the snow wasn't too bad. So I got up onto sort of the approach, and just like all the other passes, it was full of snow, and took me quite a while to get there. And I made some video of this. That if you're interested in, let me know, and I'll send you the link to it. But I'm not going to post it on my main Facebook page because some of it's fairly harrowing. But yeah, long story short, I did make it. I was following bear tracks most of the time. I think the bear was trying to do the same thing I was, which was get out of the pass over the lowest point. But it is pretty unnerving to be following fresh bear tracks, going in the exact same direction for hours and kind of getting lost, and the tracks will go away, and then you'll find them again, and you can see exactly what they're doing too. Like the bear was taking a rest on a rock, and then I saw it actually slip a little bit on the side of a hill. It was really strange. So I got up to the top of the pass. There was whiteout conditions for a while, so I couldn't see anything. It literally feels like you're just walking into white nothingness when there's whiteout. And there was no tracks because it had snowed, so I felt like I was the only person that had ever been there. And the only thing I had going or to follow was my phone. So you're literally just looking down at your phone, getting a bearing, and then walking in that direction in white nothingness for, like a couple hundred yards, and then you get another bearing. So I eventually made it back down valley and finally met some people, and they were the first people that I'd seen in 5 days, besides Wishy and Padre, who had lost 2 days earlier. And they assured me that the parking lot did exist, and there were people there fishing, and I could probably get a ride. So I scrambled down there and found a ride back into Bishop. And so that's where I am now. I'm back at the hostel. And so I'll try to keep this short, but there was about 30 people here, and they'd all had to bail also. Most of them, none of them actually got as far as we did, or as I did, and they'd had to walk backwards in some case 30 miles to get out. And some of them had gone off on this other trail called Sawmill Pass Trail, and they made it out. But everyone was very confused and just kind of coming to terms with the situation that the hike was necessarily coming to a standstill. Some of them who had been traveling in groups, there's a group of about 10, had video of them crawling over the snow. They figured out that it was actually much faster for them to have this crawling technique than it was to try to walk on their feet. That was kind of amazing. So everybody's got different plans now. What I'm going to do is, there's a group of 11 of us, and we've rented a van. I'm actually driving the van, and we're going to drive north about 700 miles to a town called Castillo, I think. Castillo. It's still in California. And I'm going to drop them all off at the trailhead, go to a town called Redding, and get a cab back to the trailhead. So we'll have a bunch of people, and we'll be way out of the snow, and then we'll start hiking south, basically back to this hostel. And the idea is that by the time we get to the Sierras, about 3 weeks will have passed, and that will be 3 weeks of the sun melting the snow, and it'll be a completely different landscape and much more manageable, much quicker. And then when you get back to the hostel, do a similar thing, take transportation up to Castillo again, and then hike north from there. So that's basically the plan. And I just heard from Wishy and Padre about an hour or two ago. They did make it to where they wanted to go, to VVR. But I don't know any of the details. I don't know, if they had trouble getting there, or if it was easier after the ranger station where I bailed. If they got some bad weather. That's the other thing. It keeps snowing up there. And the weather report for the next week or so says, snow almost every day, which wasn't supposed to happen. We thought this was going to be a low snow year, and we would just kind of, walk through. So they're okay. The only people I haven't heard from are Timber and Coins, and Timber and Coins went in maybe a day or two after we did. So I'm really hoping that they show up soon, or I hear from them soon, because it really is pretty scary out there. I think we weren't in any real serious danger, so long as we didn't trip and fall and hurt ourselves somewhere way off the trail. And the real danger is you're almost never following the trail. So if you do fall and hurt yourself, nobody's going to find you, half a mile from the trail, if you can't make a lot of noise, or if you don't have a satellite sort of emergency button. So there's a lot of reasons why it's not safe to go in there, especially alone. but even as a group, and hearing lots of other people's stories of situations they got in, it's just like, yeah, almost no reason to go back in. Some people they bought snowshoes and they're gonna try to do that. So that might work out, and they're just gonna take a lot of food and snowshoes. But yeah, I'm done with this particular section for now. After my experience, sort of helping JJ up Forester Pass, and then after losing my friends in a blizzard, in a lightning blizzard storm in the middle of the night. So anyway, I'm really excited to get back to kind of normal hiking and the kind of day where I can listen to music or a podcast and just kind of enjoy myself, rather than listening for every tiny little sound, which might be an underground river that I'm walking across unknowingly, or something that's stalking me, coyotes or bears, or just watching the weather and being worried all the time. So that's what I'm going to do. It's a little bit of a bummer not to be able to continue straight on the trail and do it all in one straight shot, like, from point A to point B. But I think this is the best use of my time, rather than just sitting here in this hostel for 3 weeks until the snow melts and then going back out. I think it'll be much more interesting to just get out there and start hiking again. And let's see, I think that was it. There was one other thing that I wanted to mention, but it's falling out of my head. I think it is gone. Yeah. So anyway, that's it from me for now. And thank you guys all for leaving comments on the photos and all that. And it really helps a lot to know that there's some people watching, and that some of the photos, at least, that I got may have made that experience worth it. And certainly I learned a lot from being out there. It's definitely one of the more extreme experiences that I've had in my life. All right, Rafe out.